Convention Center. Now, the reason why I got these glasses on is because my guest has one of the hottest podcasts in all of sports, and of course, it is called Huddle and Flow, along with Jim Trotter of the NFL Network. And I got to say, as he likes to say, his show is fire, so I had to bring a little cool, little water, a little ice, to with glasses and stuff, to this conversation with, ladies and gentlemen. He is the NFL Network reporter, and you can follow him on Twitter at Wyche89, Mr. Steve Wyche. Steve, good afternoon to you, my friend.
My man Darren, bro, you are clean as a whistle. You got them shades on, or you are representing hard, man. I love seeing it, my man.
I appreciate it. And look, I've got to say, and I've given the Tampa Bay host committee a shout out, because literally every day, that I've worn a suit, they've had a pair of glasses that matches the outfit. So, they got the white shades, they got this, so, which matches the blue in here. So I've been real impressed with what they've done thus far. But wanted to jump right into things, Steve. And of course, I wanted to get your initial thoughts. I know we spoke a couple of weeks ago, but your thoughts on this matchup. I foreseen this matchup back in April of last year when the Bucs acquired Tom Brady, and I felt that the Chiefs had a strong enough team to come back to the Super Bowl, but I thought that Brady would be the difference maker in the NFC when he joined the Bucs. What do you see in this initial matchup that is different from what you saw on November 29th?
Yeah, first off, it's funny because if you think back that far, I once again mistakenly thought the Saints were going to be the team to come out of the NFC, and the Saints beat the Bucs twice, but when it came money time, Bucs were all over them. This is going to be a really good game. The last time they played 27-24, because Kansas City got off to a 17-0 lead in the first quarter. The Cheetah kept on getting behind the defense, but the Bucs settled in. So I think the fact that you heard Devin White for the Buccaneers and linebacker. You say, look, the plays might be different, this and that, but we know their personalities a little, like how they responded to us coming back on them. So, the Buccaneers are very confident in this game. And look, I like the Chiefs in this game. I think the Chiefs have a ton of weapons. The defense, I think, is going to have to get a takeaway or two. I think that's huge. And the Chiefs cannot turn the ball over. The one thing we've seen in 3 postseason games, the Buccaneers have generated 41 points off of takeaways from opponents. That means they're scoring touchdowns. They're not kicking field goals, and it means they're generating takeaways, big hits, interceptions. I was talking to Derek Brooks, the Hall of Famer who played for the Bucs. He's like, the one thing you've noticed past 6 weeks with the Buccaneers, when the defenders get their hands on the ball, it's not pass breakups. They're getting interceptions. So Pat Mahomes got to be on point, which he has been. And, they better be ready. Some of the short passes, the Buccaneers are not going to let them get deep. And some helmets are coming, because if you've been watching this Buccaneers secondary in the postseason, they don't care if they get a flag. They're coming with the hat on the tackles. If they get a defensive hold or a DPI, they're putting hands on you. And Darren, folks don't like getting hands put on them. But the hands are coming in this game.
Yeah, and that's one of the differences that I was telling people as the playoffs started. That one, I saw Tampa Bay playing much differently after the Chiefs beat them back in November. I think right now they're on a 7-game win streak, but I saw defensively that one, just as a student of history, it's hard to beat a team 3 times in the same season. So obviously I had them beating Washington. I think it wasn't going to be that big of a deal because they had a backup quarterback, and granted their defense was kind of young, but steadily improving. So they were to put 30 points up. They had scored 40 points initially, I think twice, since the Chiefs had beat them. So I knew they could score points on the board. And then going up against the New Orleans Saints, I didn't see Drew Brees being that same quarterback that he was prior to his injury. I thought he came back too early and too soon against the Chiefs. Instead of allowing them to go with Taysom Hill. But to that point, they were able to beat them because they were able to force turnovers. They were to get pressure on Drew Brees. But Drew Brees is not Patrick Mahomes. That next week, again, against Aaron Rodgers, they were able to get pressure on him, and they were to get some sacks and get some hits on him and cause an interception. I know everybody is talking about the fact that Patrick Mahomes is going to be without his 2 tackles, Mitchell Schwartz and Eric Fisher. But I've also argued that Patrick is not one of those quarterbacks that's beholden to his offensive line, because he's not just a steady drop back quarterback where he needs to rely on the pocket. He makes his biggest plays, whether I like it or not, with his legs running outside the pocket, breaking down the defense, where the defense has to decide, we're either going to go with Patrick or we're going to stay with our assignment. And then, that allows Patrick to make the decision to beat you one of 2 ways. Your thoughts?
Well, look, we had Todd Bowles on the podcast that's out today, and he was fantastic. I mean, he really took us under the hood about Patrick Mahomes. And he said the thing that makes Patrick Mahomes different than everybody else is by the time he takes the snap, he not only is looking at his keys as to where to make the throws, but he knows his escape route, right? He knows he can see if there's a guy getting pressure on him who maybe is an interior guy who's not that fast, that he can backpedal a certain way and buy himself more time, and he's got the arm strength to let it rip. Or he knows where he can take off and run. Like he'll hold the ball, let the receivers clear, let the linebackers drop deeper than they would like, and then he'll take off running. So he said Mahomes is the X factor because, Bowles said, look, that offensive line might be banged up, but they're playing in the Super Bowl. They'll be just fine. If they can run the ball a little bit and Mahomes can have some creases to do either throw the ball or create, they're a very, very dangerous team to stop.
I'm a big proponent in this game that for me, it's going to be a battle of X's and O's, but it's going to be really the defense, like you mentioned, Todd Bowles. But I think it's going to be what Todd Bowles can design from the mistakes that they made the first matchup that they made. Obviously, I don't expect them to single cover Tyreek Hill at all in this game.
No.
So that's one lesson that I believe that they learned. But secondly, for Steve Spagnuolo, he has been the kryptonite to Tom Brady wherever he has gone. So talk about that if you would. What defensively Kansas City is going to need to do to stop Tom Brady the second time around.
Deny the run. They can't stop the run. They cannot allow Fournette and Ronald Jones to get going. And as we have seen in the playoffs, that offensive line, when they can establish a ground game, they can rake. Okay, they're a center. They are a very physical group up front. And again, if they can establish a run, they are a headache. And so that's the first thing. It sounds cliche, but you cannot let the Buccaneers lean on you. So then that gets Tom Brady into some run action, passing game, allow some other plays to open up. So it's hugely important that they deny the run. It's also hugely important that they get to Tom Brady with 4. And that's what Steve Spagnuolo has been very good against, very good with. But he had Justin Tuck and OCU Manura and Michael Strahan and at one point JPP, to make that happen. And so the personnel is a little bit different, but you can get to Brady. You can force him to sail some passes. You look at that completion rate, it's not as great as you think. Now, a lot of that's because they're taking shots downfield, at least 15 to 20 air yards plus downfield. So, I mean, again, that factors into it, but don't allow the big plays because they're going to take shots with AB and Scotty Miller and Mike Evans. They're going to take some shots, but they have got to deny the run game, and that's where Tampa's been making its money in the postseason.
Steve Wyche is an NFL Network reporter, and you can follow him on Twitter at Wyche89. And, of course, he's also the co-host of the Huddle and Flow podcast, along with our good friend Jim Trotter, his colleague with the NFL Network. Steve, when we look at this game, obviously I think it comes down to coaching, but also where, if you've been in this scenario before. Kansas City brings back 90%, 95% of their team that played in the Super Bowl last year. With the Bucs, I think you may have maybe 5 players that have played in the Super Bowl. Obviously, Tom Brady, Rob Gronkowski, JPP, and Dominican Sue a couple years ago, and I believe Antonio Brown his rookie year. So do you think the lights will be too bright for Tampa, even though it's a home game for them? But all the pomp and circumstance and the 20 to 40 minute wait at halftime that they'll have to experience, do you think that might be too bright, or do you think once kickoff and once the hits start coming, it'll just be a regular football game for them?
Well, I mean, you really never know. I mean, and that's the main thing for a young football team. How are they going to respond to the national anthem and everything that happens before the game and the long halftime? But here's what's going to help a team like them. And it's not just playing at home, but it's the circumstances around COVID, right? They don't have to go anywhere but their practice facility. Typically during Super Bowl week, there are media obligations where they have to go to a hotel venue to meet all of the media, or they've got to go here to do certain things. Now all they got to do is open up their laptop, right? And so seriously, I mean, that takes a lot of the starch out of everything that they do. And the fact that the Chiefs are back home operating as normal. They're not coming in until Saturday. So this is like a regular season road game for them. And same for the Buccaneers here. this is where, I mean, the whole circumstances with the COVID protocols and whatnot really kind of balances out that experience thing. And now once kickoff starts and these guys start playing football, yes, it comes down to coaching, but it also comes down to the playmakers making plays and which ones are going to be make the biggest plays at the most important times.
Now, I respect your X's and O's and your analysis, so I'm going to put you on the spot. I'm going to see I'm going to see just how good you are. I'm going to compare you to Brian Billick when I do this. Give me your X factor. Yeah, exactly.
Come on, man.
Hey, the pressure I'm putting
on that dude's a freaking genius. Are you kidding me?
Well, hey, that's why I got you on the show, because I think you're a genius as well. But in all seriousness, so I like to know your X factor for both teams. So X factor for the Bucs for them to win the game, X factor for the Chiefs.
Okay, let's go to Kansas City Chiefs. To me, you just heard me talk about how the Buccaneers have to run the ball. I think the Chiefs have to run the ball. I think it's very important that they establish something. It's funny, Derek Brooks said something I hadn't thought about. He said, look back to the second half of last year's Super Bowl. What happened to get the Chiefs' offense back on track? They ran the ball. He said you saw Eric Bieniemy's impact on that offense more than ever in the second half of that game. So don't expect them to wait that long to try to establish a run game to kind of hit the Bucs defense for a little bit of a jolt, right? And so if you can get them thinking about that run game a little bit, then that passing game is going to open up. So the actual strategy of the run game is I'm going to say the X factor for the Chiefs. Now, for the X factor for the Buccaneers, to me, it's going to be, the play of their defensive line. If they can get pressure on Pat with 4, which we saw last week. I mean, they took away the run from Aaron Rodgers inside Sue and Vita Vea. That interior pressure allowed JPP and Shaq Barrett to do some things against a mobile quarterback. Really kept them off balance. That was fantastic. Let the guys on the back end do their thing. So I think it's the front 4 for the Buccaneers and the run game for the Chiefs.
I'm curious, though, because we talk so much about Patrick being under pressure, especially when you try to blitz him. He has a 97% QBR rating, and I think he has like 15 touchdowns versus no interceptions against the blitz. I know. It's
you know how many times the Buccaneers blitzed Aaron Rodgers? Otis, 0. They are not a heavy blitzing team. Okay, Todd Bowles, when he does blitz against Washington, he waited into the fourth quarter to turn them loose. Now, against the Saints, there were some opportunities where he let guys like Devin White and Levante David get in here and there, but they are not a heavy blitz team.
Curious, though, with the fact that Fisher and Mitchell Schwartz are going to be out, how do you think Andy Reid substitutes, and how do you think he works out this offensive line? Especially, I think that they might be down one, depending on how they test the rest of the week with the COVID stuff. Right now, they have 6 linemen. How do you think Andy Reid adjusts or prepares with that?
Tight ends, dual tight ends. I mean, we see that a lot in the NFL. They don't run triple tight ends a lot, or you use one of your wide receivers as kind of a flanker. In tight, lined up tight, to really put pressure on the defense, outside linebacker-wise or whatever, to decide what they're going to do. You have to give them some optical images, or you bring in a second tight end to cover, to help max protect. If you're going to release Kelsey or flex him, bring another tight end to serve as your third offensive tackle. That's a way. Maybe bring in Lev Bell to help on pass pro a little bit as well. I mean, there are different ways you can counter that. Another way is run the ball guard to guard. If you can move Vita Vea and Ndamukong Suh a little bit, run the ball guard to guard, because then they have to start doing some things to get the optics of it, right? You get guys thinking here and there, like, man, they're hitting us inside, so now we need to squeeze, boom, hit some stuff off tackle. One thing that the Chiefs do that doesn't get enough credit, and this is, again, on the podcast, we asked Todd Bowles about this, they do so much angle and cross, blocking. Kelsey's coming across the field. Offensive tackles are coming across the field. That's another way you can make up for maybe a lack of direct strength or technique with backup tackles. You do all that stuff they're doing, crossing guys and trapping guys and whamming guys. That's another way to keep a heavy penetrating guy. I mean, Ndamukong Suh will get up the field in a minute. Okay, you let him up the field, and all of a sudden, bam, a tackle's coming, hitting him in the hip and kicking him out. I mean, there's another way to open up holes. So Andy Reid is brilliant at it. Todd Bowles said some teams try it, but no team executes up front with their speed and their technique, some of the trickeration blocking wise, like the Kansas City Chiefs.
I got two questions for you before we get out of here. You mentioned Todd Bowles. Obviously, talked about Eric Bieniemy earlier. This weekend, the Super Bowl, for the first time in its history, will feature 4 coordinators that are African American. We know that Eric Bieniemy got bypassed for the third year in a row. Just your opinion alone. What is it that the NFL can do, if anything, that would, that sees an Eric Bieniemy get a job next time around? Because one of the things that I think hurts is the fact that, he being the OC of the Chiefs, as long as they keep advancing, it's hard for him to have interviews throughout the playoffs, but also get hired, because I guess he can't take that until after the season's over. Is there anything that you would think of, if you were the commissioner, that you would try to implement that would help better the chances of African American coaches, or and not to just spotlight Eric Bieniemy, but just African American coaches in general? Because
so let's look at the black coaches who are coaching the Super Bowl. Don't allow interviews to start until after the Super Bowl. What's the rush? Okay, you've got a new coach in place, but if everybody's on an even scale, they can build their staffs at the same time. Teams can interview more people. Non-playoff teams can interview more people that they maybe didn't initially think of, or that they're competing with other teams. So that will give them more time. I mean, this is one thing I've had a couple conversations with, besides the fact that a lot of teams don't want to hire coaches of color. They don't want to hire people who are still coaching in the playoffs. As you see, all the spots are already filled. That's stupid to me. Okay, so I mean, it really is. The best coaches are coaching in the Super Bowl. Why wouldn't you pluck their roster? And then the other thing they can do in terms of black coaches, stop asking black people for answers. Black people didn't create racism. Black people did not create oppression. Black people did not create deniability. Start asking your owners. Start asking the people who are doing the hiring, the team presidents and stuff like that. What do you need to fix? Because a couple things we're seeing is a lot of these younger coaches, they're hanging out with the bros, and not like the brothers bros, but like the bro hug bros, right, from their fraternity. That's who they hang out with. They don't have a deep encyclopedia of black coaches that they know about. So maybe introduce them. Have some of these black assistant coaches come to league meetings and things like that, so head coaches who are there can meet folks who don't look like them, right, or who weren't in their fraternities. And so those are things that they, a couple of things they can do. But I think right now I'm at the point of people stop calling me asking about what can be done. I'm black, man. Ask the white people who aren't doing the hiring, and then maybe you'll get some answers, because I don't see any of them being held accountable or having their feet held to the fire when it comes to this situation.
My man, Mr. Steve Wyche. Steve, before I let you go, I know you're covering the game and stuff this weekend over reporting for the NFL Network. So I don't know if you can tell me who you think is going to win, but if you think the Chiefs are going to win, blink for me.
Yeah. Okay. No. I got the Chiefs.
Okay. Just want to. What's your score in the game Sunday?
Oh, good Lord! So score. Let's just say. Let's just say 30 to 31, 28. 31, 28.
You think it's gonna be that low?
You want me to have Harrison Buck kicking a field goal with
Hell
a 50-yarder with 3 seconds left?
No, I do not want to come down to Harrison Butker. You trying to give me a heart attack on the air? No, I do not want that. I need a, look. I do think it's going to go down to the wire. But look, for me, and you can tell me if you think I'm right or wrong. I think Patrick is going to have a big day. I think he's going to throw for 5 touchdowns. I think Patrick wants to make up for his play in last year's game. You hear folks like Skip Bayless talking about he threw a punt pass to Tyreek Hill, and there was talk, of course, that Damian Williams possibly should have been the MVP. I think Patrick's competitiveness would put it out there where he wants to throw for 5 touchdowns. I think Andy Reid would also love to have a great offensive showing, because
of course,
yeah, but I'm saying, but look, the whole hype and the buildup is Mahomes versus Brady. So if Mahomes doesn't have a big day or good statistical day, then I mean. Trust me, the talk shows.
I'll tell you what. If he went 5 for 30
and they win,
and you do 5 touchdowns,
that would be good.
Come on, bro.
That'd be good for me because I got money on 5 touchdowns. So, yes, Steve, I appreciate your excellent insight just then. Steve Wyche, of course, ladies and gentlemen, you all can follow him. Well, Steve, I'll let you promote yourself. I'm sorry. Go and let people know where they can follow you, where they can find you, and everything that you got going on.
Sure. On Twitter and Instagram, at Wyche, WYCHE 89. That's the old jersey number. Hit us on the Huddle and Flow podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and I'm telling you, the one we have right now with Todd Bowles, some of the stuff he says about defending Pat Mahomes and the Chiefs is stuff you have not heard before, and it is real. It is a great, great Super Bowl appetizer.
Man, you know what? I'm so jealous because only you all can pull out these coaches Super Bowl week like nobody else can. Steve, look, man, really appreciate it. Best of luck to you this weekend. I know you're down here in Tampa, so we cross paths. If not, have a safe trip back to California when it's all said and done.
My man, Darren, take care, and thanks for having me on.
Anytime, my friend. All right, we'll be back in just a little bit. I'll be joined by Steve's colleague, Jeff Chadilla, right here on the ship.